Good evening, and a very warm welcome from the York Consortium for Conservation and Craftsmanship. My name is Jill Chitty, and I'm a trustee of the York Foundation. That's the charitable arm of the consortium, and I'm Reader in Conservation Studies in the Department of Archaeology at the University of York. So I'm delighted to be chairing this evening and to welcome both our members and many non-members. I think we have about 45 people registered for this evening. So I hope that our regular participants will forgive me if I just say a few words about the consortium as a bit of an introduction before we begin. The consortium was established 20 years ago in recognition of York's unique role as a hub for heritage conservation and craft skills. And we've built on this to emphasise the close integration between craft conservation and craft skills, and to emphasise the focus that we need both for practitioners and those interested in supporting our heritage. The Foundation's annual bursary scheme has also flourished, and we've awarded over 250 bursaries to support the development of craft and conservation skills. And I just mentioned that the closing date for this year's bursary awards has been extended now to the 31st of May, so you've got plenty of time to get your applications in. And the awards will be announced in June. All the information about that is on our website. So I'm delighted to welcome our speakers from Historic England this evening, Dr. Sophie Norton and Phil Pollard. And I'll just introduce them both before we begin with their presentations. Sophie is the Sector Skills Manager for Historic England. Sophie's been central in initiating and developing the Hamish Ogston Foundation Heritage Building Skills Programme, which we're going to hear about this evening. Sophie developed her professional interest in the decline of skills for historic building conservation while she was working at the University of York. As Hamlin Fielden Fellow and Heritage Skills Coordinator in the Archaeology Department, Sophie worked as a lecturer in the Centre for Conservation Studies, but also in developing initiatives to address heritage skills challenges in the Yorkshire region. And this included working with the York Consortium on a project that brought together several traditional estates in North Yorkshire to train a cohort of building craft apprenticeships. Sophie's work with craftspeople in Yorkshire also formed the basis for her PhD, Heritage Conservation and the Building Crafts, which we heard about a couple of weeks ago. Phil Pollard is the Heritage Apprenticeships Manager at Historic England, working at the interface between vocational learning and traditional education. His work supports the development and implementation of heritage apprenticeship standards and other employability and skills initiatives for the historic environment sector, like the Kickstart scheme, for example. Phil has a degree in archaeology, also from the University of York, and a background in training, work-based learning and higher education skills development, having worked in local authority heritage training, specialist traineeships and doctoral training initiatives across a range of subject areas within the heritage. You are very welcome, and in fact we encourage you to submit questions during the presentation. Please, you can do this by just going to the Q&A icon, which should appear at the bottom of your screen if you hover your cursor there. You can put questions in during the talk or wait till the end. But please do make use of that if there are things you'd like to ask about. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So now to introduce Sophie and Phil, who will be talking to us about Historic England's exciting new partnership with the Hamish Ogston Foundation, which has generously pledged £3.5 million to support skills training and employment in the construction industry, particularly focusing on the skills needed to conserve historic buildings. And I'm going to hand over to Sophie now to begin her presentation.
Thank you, Jill. So thanks everybody for coming to the webinar tonight. We're really excited to share with you some details about the programme that we're developing in partnership with the Hamish Ogston Foundation. We've called that the Hamish Ogston Foundation Heritage Building Skills programme in recognition of the fact that it's heritage building skills that we are really keen to try and develop with the foundation. So we're just going to give you a short presentation that will set out our relationship with the foundation and how it's developed over the last couple of years, Then we're going to talk to you about some research that we did to underpin the programme that we have developed. We're going to talk in a little bit of detail about the programme, 3 different levels of training that we're hoping to deliver through the programme and how it all fits together. And then Phil is going to talk to you a bit more about how we're going to try and recruit our apprentices, the benefits of the programme really to the heritage sector quite broadly, and then some information about how you might get involved. And we're really hoping that a number of you will want to get involved in the programme after you've heard what we have to say today. So the Hamish Ogston Foundation is a charitable organisation that has funding interests focusing on health, music and heritage, both in the UK and internationally. They have pledged funding to the restoration of the Great East Window at York Minster, which will be familiar to everybody. And they've also given pledged funding to the rebuilding of Christchurch Cathedral in New Zealand, which most of you will know was really damaged in the earthquake a few years ago. So kind of a very kind of broad thinking funder. It's exciting to be working with. And on this particular project, they're really, really keen to see roots, create roots into genuine employment with solid practical skills and career routes for all of our participants. So we hope that the programme we develop provides that. We will talk about that in a sec. So the broad objectives of the programme are first and foremost to reduce shortages in heritage craft skills and create opportunities for multiple entry points into heritage construction. So I referenced earlier the 3 different tiers of training that we're hoping to deliver against, and those 3 tiers kind of align with those multiple entry points. And then the second objective of the scheme is to improve the condition of heritage at risk sites in Northern England. And we'll talk in a second about how that is going to work in practice. So with those broad objectives in mind, we developed a kind of an overarching programme that we felt would meet both the sector and the Hamish Ogston Foundation's needs. And in order to kind of make sure that that was fit for purpose, we did a programme of research that some of you might have been involved in last year, where we went out to employers in the heritage construction sector and did some qualitative research really about what the opportunities and barriers might be to providing work-based training in their organisations. And one that we were really, really thrilled to hear back from the researchers. I should say that the researchers had lots of experience of doing research like this in the construction sector, but less so in the heritage construction sector. And one of the things that they were really keen to share with us was how much enthusiasm there was within heritage construction from people to pass on their skills and to be involved in this programme. So that is something that we recognise and we think is obviously it's something that we really want to capitalise on as part of the programme. They also liked the way that we had structured the programme. So those 3 tiers of training that I've already mentioned, they felt that recognised the fact that there was progression in craft skills and that was a useful thing to try and deliver as part of the programme. They also thought that the opportunity for some of the participants to work on Historic England grant-funded heritage at risk sites was really well received. There was kind of unequivocal enthusiasm for that. And they also thought that a programme that was linked to Historic England quite strongly would be a good thing, and it would be useful to have such a training scheme that kind of took with it Historic England's reputation. So that was really positive. And then there were some barriers that we want to try and address as part of the programme and its delivery. So first and foremost really was resources. And the fact that it is difficult both to recruit apprentices, to get apprentices in, to pay their salaries really, and then to recruit and then to provide the kind of pastoral support and the training support that is needed on a day-to-day basis. So we certainly think that we can address this with this programme. We were a little bit surprised to find that recruitment was such a challenge for heritage construction firms that were looking to pass on their skills to new entrants. and they found that it was difficult. It wasn't just difficult to sort of advertise positions and find the right people. It was also quite difficult to run interviews and to ask the right questions at the recruitment stage. And we think that we do quite a lot of work and thinking on recruitment in our organisation. So we think we can bring something to bear in that. And Phil will talk about that a little bit later. Then we also found that there was some scepticism about the construction training that was currently available. Now, we've done quite a lot of work with the Institute for Apprenticeships and other organisations as apprenticeship qualifications have been recast, if you like, or amended in the last few years. And we feel confident that the sort of the structure is in place for heritage construction to be delivered through the mainstream construction training that is available. But we want to make sure that that really works by working quite closely with a small network of further education colleges that can work with us and each other to make sure that heritage is delivered maybe a little bit more consistently across the colleges that are involved in the programme. And then there was a sort of implicit suggestion, if you like, that there was something around confidence and being able to pass on really high level skills, and that was never explicitly said, but when we asked the different firms about whether they'd be more interested in hosting trainees at a very early level or a sort of more of an apprenticeship level or a more experienced level, most firms were more interested in those first two levels. And we wonder whether or not that the third level was more about confidence, but that hasn't, that's not been proven. That's just an implicit suggestion in the findings. So with that in mind, we kind of fine-tuned this model, which is how majority of the training will be delivered. Well, all of the training will be delivered. So you'll see that there are 3 tiers of training on the outside of the diagram. And we have called those preparing for work in the heritage sector, entering the workforce, and sustaining the sector. And so the first sector is really targeting placements with heritage. Well, I should firstly say that Historic England doesn't propose to be able to deliver the work-based training that these individuals will need. What we're looking to do is work quite in close partnership with firms like you, really, the small and medium-sized companies that actually do this work on some of our grant-funded sites and on other sites around the north of England. So the first one is that we want to try and recruit a cohort of students that are already engaged in college and working on a construction course, but maybe haven't yet got their first apprenticeship, and we want to provide them with short-term but paid placements in heritage construction firms, really to give them a kind of a taster about what the sector has to offer. Those individuals should be working towards an individual achievement of a construction qualification, like I've already said, and they should be able to complete that within the 5 years of the overall programme. And as well as the placement itself will sort of be bookended by opportunities for mentoring with mentors that are internal to Historic England, but also others from outside Historic England that we will recruit. So that's the first tier of training. And then the second tier of the training is all about apprenticeships. So like I've already said, we feel confident that these 6 mainstream construction training apprenticeships do provide the broad framework to be able to deliver quality training in heritage construction sector. So we'll be working with colleges, again in the north of England, to deliver bricklaying, carpentry and joinery, painting and decorating, plastering, roofing and stonemasonry apprenticeships. We are putting forward that we would like to employ those apprentices directly, so they will become members of Historic England staff, but we will second them to host companies that can provide the work-based training that they need. And I think that's a really important distinction, because it means that Historic England will be able to do most of the kind of administration work that is around recruiting individuals and liaising with the college, and that means that the company will be able to focus on really passing on those skills to the individuals. But of course, the company will be such an important part of that kind of network of training, if you like. So there'll be the apprentice, there'll be the company, there'll be Historic England and the college, and there might also be potential for some mentoring outside that. So we think that provides a really kind of a robust package of support for an apprentice to go through their apprenticeship. And then finally, the third area is what we've called sustaining the sector, because it is an opportunity. It really provides a pathway, if you like, for individuals to learn some of the really specialist skills that the sector needs to sustain itself, but that there might not be a big enough critical mass to be able to have an apprenticeship in it, for example. So some of the examples we've talked about are maybe a plasterer that wants to learn how to do some hand modelling, or a stonemason that wants to develop I don't know, carving skills, or even a carpenter joiner that's worked on mainstream construction sites that wants to learn heritage skills. That third tier provides a mechanism by which they could do that. So we're suggesting that we could pay them a bursary for quite a prolonged period, up to a year, and they could do a single placement or a series of placements, and possibly some kind of short course training or other types of training, to be able to build that opportunity with us and with them. And again, there will be access to those mentors that I keep talking about. And then finally, and I think most innovatively, we've committed that every person engaged in the programme should be able to spend time at a heritage at risk site that Historic England has involvement in. And at the moment, that is going to take place at distinct summer schools in the summers of 2022 and 2023. And at those summer schools, the individuals in the programme should be able to have, they will see conservation in action, of course, and they will be able to work with the contractors that are working on those sites. But they will also get lots of exposure to Historic England experts and to others that are experts in the sector. And what we really want to do with those sites is for people to see conservation as quite an interdisciplinary activity, where craftspeople and architects and Historic England work together to kind of save these sites, and even sometimes, even quite often, the building owners work together to save these sites. So that's the ambition, really. That's the framework for the project. And the final point is just to say that the heritage at risk element it draws on our experience of delivering work like this at Shrewsbury Flaxmore Maltings. So that the Shrewsbury Flaxmore Maltings is a Grade 1 listed building. It's known as the first iron frame building in the world, and it was derelict for a number of years, up until I think probably 2008 or something like that. And Historic England acquired it, and we have been working on it in order to save that building. And as part of the main contract to save the main mill and kiln, we have built in a series of different training opportunities, and some of those are placements, and some of those are different things. And we hope to take that project has been quite successful. Some of those individuals have gone on to develop careers in kind of relevant areas, and so that's the kind of model that we want to build on as part of the Hamish Ogston Foundation Heritage Building Skills Programme, particularly with regard to heritage at risk.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. I'm just going to check if I can control the screen. I can. Excellent. Good evening, everybody. So Sophie and Jill are very, very calm, cool about this. I found it very weird when we're talking to a room of people who are in the room, but good evening. I just wanted to talk to you a bit about the approach we're going to be taking with recruitment for this program. And we're looking to take a very sort of positive action approach with regards to recruitment. We're going to be targeting young people particularly and aiming to increase diversity within the sector workforce through this. And so I just wanted to give you a quick example of the work we've done in this area previously and why we think we can bring this to bear on this programme and tackle some of those issues that came up in the research that Sophie talked about. So the prime example is that we received a grant funding from All Churches Trust to pilot a heritage apprenticeship programme for the new Historic Environment Advice Assistant apprenticeship standard that was only created just under 2 years ago. And so we received funding from them to recruit 6 new apprentices who are going to be based in our regional teams around the country. And we created a resourcing plan for that focused on social mobility areas, community outreach, and a really sort of inclusive application process. We had a small budget for a national resourcing campaign, and we used that to partner with 2 organisations, notgoingtouni.co.uk, which is a web-based resource which does what the name suggests. It helps people who are thinking about not going to university and what their career options can be. And Pathway CTM, who are on the screen there, they're an award-winning social enterprise. They've got access to thousands of students throughout the UK. They help young people make informed decisions about their next step after leaving school or college. We worked with those people nationally, had access to their resources, but as well as that, we did a lot of strategic sort of local community engagement, firstly reaching out to local government work and skills teams to promote and disseminate, but also then actively identifying and then working with local community groups, mentors and leaders in youth employability or just community or social enterprises in those regions to target the promotion of the opportunities to individuals that those community leaders would most feel would benefit. So they know kind of the people who are looking for these opportunities, who will really grab them, and they were able to help sort of direct our promotion to that. So that kind of national approach and that community-based approach and the sort of the work we put in there really helped with that particular program. And it did pay off. I mean, I say we only had six positions there across the country, and we received nearly 400 applications. So we had, over 60 times as many applicants as posts were available. There's some figures on the screen there about our applicant data. We definitely hit our target range of that 16 to 24 age group. That's the predominant there. And then also we made real progress in reaching sort of Black and minority ethnic applicants. We had sort of over 36% of applicants coming from those areas, which for our organisation is a real shift in who usually applies for roles working with us. So the learning from that project has really been fed into our future projects, particularly informing our plans for how we go about recruitment and helping the hosts get apprentices and things for this programme. We've worked with Youth Employment UK, signed up to their charter as a youth-friendly employer as well. So we really are sort of working really hard in this area. The sort of other main thing I wanted to talk about, if I can get the screen to move, there it goes, is the overall benefits, which hopefully are reasonably obvious, but this is a major in-work training and apprenticeships program that's going to be taking place, and really it will really help to ensure sort of craft and trade skills needed to repair and maintain historic buildings are passed on to future generations. We've got on the screen that the potential impact of Brexit. We expect Brexit to further exacerbate skills gaps. So hopefully this program can help tackle those skills being maintained and coming through at those different levels. I think what's really important for me and what I think this scheme really offers is it does offer new routes both into and through heritage construction for people at different stages of their careers. HLF funded heritage construction type programs, they've demonstrated 60 to 70% of people who do that kind of program then stay on in the sector. So we want to carry on that tradition, and we want to improve that. The other key thing it's going to do is offer opportunities to young people who have been disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. There's lots of data out there. There's record numbers of the 16 to 24 age group claiming universal credit in this past year, that means they're unemployed, they can't get any work. And that's a real target area we think this program will really tackle. And anyone joining in this program, they get the warm fuzzy glow of being able to say they've achieved that as in all those areas, you know, helping those young people, making sure those skills are passed on, and finally, obviously, making sure our historic environment is protected and conserved for the future. So hopefully that's given you the key benefits. Finally, really, is how to get involved. We're going to be setting up a number of sort of one-to-one conversations with companies that work in heritage construction between now and the end of May. We'll be providing more information on the program, and we'll be having a sort of series of questions and potentially sort of telephone interviews almost to help us match employers to the opportunities we want to present. And then we'll work from that point to start looking at recruitment of apprentices. So we kind of want to leave with a question really of would you be interested in speaking more? And so hopefully Katie is able to put up our little poll. If you were interested in this and want to discuss further, and particularly interested in potentially taking on an apprentice or taking someone for replacement, or one of the higher level ones, can you please click on the poll now and say whether we can get in touch with you? And if you say yes, we will be in touch. So that's our brief run through, really. Hopefully you've all had a chance to click on the poll and go through. I believe Katie's popped the email address into the chat as well. You email that and get more information. But that is us for our presentation. I will hand back over to Jill.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Phil and Sophie. That was extremely informative. We have now about 20-25 minutes for questions. We'll aim to finish by about 8 o'clock. So please do start. We have got 1 or 2 questions in the Q&A, but do keep those coming. I'm sure there's quite a lot to digest there, so people are probably going to need to think about it a little bit. But I've got a couple of questions to kick off with, which are coming in now. The first question is, what sort of companies would be eligible to apply to host a trainee or an apprentice? I think it would help us to have some examples, really.
Sophie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so companies that already have an in-house workforce, basically. So if you're a small stonemasonry company, or you're a company that's involved in the maintenance of churches, or you are a heritage carpentry and joinery company, or even a carpentry and joinery company that sometimes works in a heritage setting, then we would be interested to hear from you. But the key thing is that you should be the people that has the skills. We need they're the kind of, we want to pass on those actual hand skills, the stonemasonry skills, the bricklaying skills. We're not looking to deliver, we're not able to deliver sort of site management apprenticeships. It's all about hand skills. So if you have those skills in your company and that's your bread and butter, that's your day-to-day work, then please come and talk to us.
Thank you. So it's that, was it half a dozen of the skills groups that you mentioned at the beginning that we're targeting, those building construction skills in bricklaying, brickwork, carpentry, and so on?
Yeah, those.
Okay, great. So another question here then, from James Grierson. Have you worked out the approximate cost per head of the different schemes? I'm not quite sure what James is thinking about there, but presumably you have a per capita rate for those 3 different modes of engagement with the programme.
Yeah, so I don't know whether you want to speak to that, Phil.
I can do. I mean, there's lots of costs worked out. I think just to clarify, because I'm not sure if there's a slight misunderstanding, is that how it would work is if the young person themselves was on a T-level course or something like that and did a placement, they would get paid for the placement through us, through the funding from the thing. If they were on an apprenticeship, we would employ the apprentice and pay their wages, and they'd be hosted by the individual. So we have costs worked out for all that, but for the employer hosting them, they do not have to pay that individual. That will be coming through us and through the money from Hamish Ogston. So just to make sure that's totally clear, we're not asking for money from hosts, we're asking them to host them and pass on those skills.
Okay. So the costs are borne entirely directly through Historic England, and then the student or the apprentice is actually is hosted by the organisation. Yeah, great. Yeah. Excellent. So here's another question from Kezia Howard, who asks, can people skip stage 1 of the programme, the pre-employment stage, if they already have a construction qualification or some relevant experience? Can they go straight on to the apprenticeship?
Yeah, so the 3 tiers are in the emphasis. We have emphasised the point of this model. Like, we're quite excited about the model and the fact that it maybe clarifies and makes more obvious routes into heritage construction. But there is every possibility that each participant on the programme will be different. So you wouldn't have to do tier 1 to tier 2 and then tier 3. In fact, we're hoping to recruit tier 2 first. So while we are excited about the model and we think it's scalable, at the moment it is showing that the model works for different people, and we're not necessarily hoping that individuals will travel through the 3 different stages of the programme.
Yeah, they're interdependent. You could as an individual, you could apply for any one of the opportunities. As a host, you could look to host any one or all 3. You know, if you can host all 3, brilliant.
Okay, great. Now another question from Adam Hickey. When will the placements or apprenticeships, when will they commence?
Yeah, so we're hoping that the first cohort of apprentices will start in the autumn. And then the tier 3 placements we're hoping to start by the end of the year, and the tier 1 placements we're hoping to start early next year.
Okay, and actually I've got a supplementary question really to that, which is obviously you're inviting people to be in touch with you directly if they're interested, but will there be some kind of open invitation to people to sort of public, if you like, invitation for people to approach you to take part in the scheme, a kind of open call, if you like?
Well, yeah, I think this is part of our open call, really, Jill. So
Okay.
we've done this, and we've done another webinar, and I think I'm pretty sure that one of the questions has come from somebody who was involved in the research last year, and as part of that we asked everybody if we could contact them in future. So yeah, we've kind of done a very slow open call, if you like, and now we plan to contact people on a one-to-one basis to find out a bit more about what they, what they can offer, and whether we can all work together in partnership, because it will be really important that we can work quite closely together.
Yeah. And it is a small sector, relatively speaking, within construction industry. So I think obviously the word will certainly be getting around. Here's a 5th question now from Peter Mackenzie. Would you liaise with colleges who run courses and invite apprentices already on those courses to participate?
I think probably Phil is a better place to answer that than me.
Potentially, the way that this program set up through the tiers is that it could be offered, the 9-week placement option could be offered to people who are on existing programs. It will really be a matter of capacity on that basis. I mean, we obviously built that tier to focus on the kind of pre-apprenticeship route, and then we recruit the apprentices who really are focused on heritage. But we can be flexible with that model, I think, and we will be looking at that option. At the moment, obviously, we're working to identify training providers who deliver the taught elements of the various apprenticeships, and we've been doing I was going to say recruitment exercise, that's not right the word, but you understand what I mean, to identify though and what they can offer and what they already have in place for helping with recruitment. So it is something we're yes, looking at.
I think it's great that it is such a flexible model, really, and that it's possible to move in both directions, as it were, with the opportunities that are there. So another question that's come in now. What happens after the apprenticeship? Is the person guaranteed a paid position, or does English Heritage or Historic England help them to find a job?
So we cannot guarantee the individuals a paid position, but we think that all the evidence shows that once you have training in this area, you are quite employable. So like Phil, well, you're very employable. So Phil referenced earlier the Heritage Lottery Fund's Skills for the Future programme, which provided lots and lots of work-based training in heritage construction. And by and large, all of the evaluation of all of those projects showed that around 75% of people continue to work in this industry afterwards, and others continue to work in sort of allied industries. And on top of that, there are other schemes out there that are comparable. So if you look at the Apprentice Foundation Building Craft programme, that's been running now for quite a number of years. And there was an evaluation of that a couple of years ago that looked at where people had gone on to, and by and large, people had stayed in the heritage construction sector. And I think so there is already that evidence, and I think we are also working on quite closely really on the mentoring support. So Phil and I are both working really on trying to recruit different types of mentor to the programme. Like I said, internal to Historic England, but also external. And some of those mentors will be able to help people how to develop construction skills into very specialist heritage skills, if that's what they wish to do. But others of them might have expertise in like business planning and be able to provide the trainees with some mentoring in how to pursue their own business goals, if you like.
Yeah, the mentoring aspect of it, with it being a large program and us overseeing that have this focus on mentoring, that really gives us the opportunity to make sure that that next step is built into that mentoring relationship. It's not a case if they finish their apprenticeship and bye you're gone. You know, they'll have worked with their mentor and indeed their peers. We're going to make sure there's a sense of cohort, so that they are thinking about where they go next, before they get to the end point.
And so if people are interested in that mentoring role, because many of the consortium's members are experienced, long-established conservation and craft practices, if people are interested in that mentoring role, they should be in contact with you too. It's not just about the training potential. Sure, great, thank you. So here's a question from Tom Austin. Currently, most trade colleges only provide mainstream new build skills, which are not specific to historic repair or conservation work. Will local trade colleges be incorporating the heritage-based skills and theory-based learning, or will this element of experience be gained from the workplace position only? Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that's one of our biggest challenges for the programme. And like I said, with the research that we did last year, that was one of the areas that was people were quite sceptical about just using the mainstream construction standards, if you like, to deliver heritage training. Well, I think we and the funder feel very confident that these individuals do need to do a nationally recognised qualification that has a currency. And I think the way we're trying to address this problem is that we want to work very closely with a small cohort of FE colleges, so that we can lean on each other and they can lean on us to help make sure that heritage is dealt with more consistently, really. Because when you speak to construction colleges in a lot of detail, you find that heritage is often delivered. It's just delivered quite inconsistently. So some places might do heritage plastering really well, and others might do heritage stonemasonry really well. And so what we're trying to do is build capacity in those that are already doing it in some places and make sure that it's delivered a bit more consistently across the piece.
Okay, another question from Adam. How will the candidates be vetted for their suitability to work in the heritage built environment? It was very interesting, Phil, you mentioned earlier the incredibly high proportion of applicants that there were for those very small number of initial opportunities that in your research. So I guess the recruitment will be quite critical, really.
It will, yeah. It's an interesting balance, actually. You know, I'll say that is an interesting balance you have to find about can they do the work you need them to do, and making it as open and accessible and inclusive as possible. And there were ways around that. You know, that will be, we haven't finalized all the recruitment material, but that will be one of the key considerations is, you know, what do they need to do in order to be able to work on site at that entry level, because the whole point is they are being trained. So they're not supposed to be fully formed at the start, but it will be part of the recruitment process that's looked at, and we'll look at ways to do that potentially remotely as well. Is going to be one of the interesting things if we're looking to get them started in September. So we've been learning on remote recruitment methods, and we've been talking to other organizations that have been doing similar things as well. I can give you a random example. MOLA, Museum of London Archaeology, have launched this year a early careers placement program, which is in archaeology, which is applicable to anyone who's got no previous archaeological experience, but they did all the recruitment online, and I've had really good conversations with them about how they did that and how they did do that balance of what are the basics they need to do and how do you test that, and you know who's going to benefit most from this opportunity. So we're building all that into the recruitment process. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. And a question from Philippa Sudine. Have application deadlines been set for each sector yet?
So no, I think that this is our next piece of work, really. Our next big piece of work is to get host organisations signed up, because we would like host organisations to be involved in that recruitment process. So we are all, you know, we're all working together from the very beginning.
And another question, really about the scale, I suppose. How many people across the 3 schemes are you expecting to support?
So across the 5 years, we're hoping to have 12 of those entry-level placements, 12 of the prepare level placements, 16 of the entry-level apprenticeships, and then 12 of the more experienced worker route to sustain the sector. So 40 altogether.
Yeah, so we're not talking hundreds, but that is a specific decision that way because of the research we did early on to identify, you know, what is the capacity across the sector to host this and host a new model. And one of the main things we want to get out of it is legacy, that this is a model that can be used for future programs for others to take on board to then expand.
Thank you, Phil. And a question from Jim Spriggs. He says, this is a great initiative. Well done. I'm glad somebody said that. Could you clarify, please, how the Hamish Ogston Foundation funding will be managed? And do you see a role for the YCCC, for the consortium, in supporting the programme?
With a fine-tooth comb by our finance department.
Okay.
Sophie, do you want to?
So
the funding's all channeled through Historic England.
Yeah, that's how it looks at the moment, and I think that makes it more straightforward from our point of view and from the foundation's point of view. But to the second part of the question, which is a bit more easy for us to manage, for me and Phil to answer, and yes, we do see a role for YCCC supporting the programme, and this is a key part of that. Already the YCCC have, the trustees have listened to us talk about the programme and kind of shared our enthusiasm for it, and this short kind of series of webinars has been developed in conjunction with the YCCC, and we yeah, we think that, you know, the YCCC obviously has a really important network in Yorkshire and more widely across the north of England, and we want to work with you and your members, so we can only see that relationship growing, really.
Tremendous, good. So it's that network, really. A couple of comments. It would be good if the process can be structured to also help applicants learn how to structure impressive applications, i.e. put their best foot forward.
I mean, definitely it's an interesting one, because hopefully the recruitment process we designed for the apprentices in particular will do that naturally, because it won't be the traditional way of, you know, sell yourself as good as how great you are and everything, because this is about learning. So that won't be as standard as that. But interestingly, having all of these experts in the heritage construction sector be involved, I think will allow us to create and get that kind of knowledge for the people at the other levels, particularly the tier ones who are coming on. You know, we can embed that with them. As Sophie said, the mentoring is available to them as well, and that can be something that's looked at from that point of view. So how do you get into this sector? What are employers really looking for in this sector? And I think that's what's going to be really helpful, is that sector specific knowledge of, you know, what am I looking for? I'll be the person who takes you on next after you finish your T level or whatever. I want you to say this to me. I want you to put it this way.
So here's a comment from Rachel Bauer. She says, from my SBAB experience with the William Morris Craft Fellows, some really keen craftsmen had picked things up as they went along, i.e. they didn't have formal training, they had the enthusiasm and learnt on the job. They were well worth encouraging, and she wonders if you might want to respond to that and how you capture that kind of enthusiasm.
Yeah, well, so I think that the programme is designed so that it can be as inclusive as possible in terms of like bringing people in and appealing to all those different types of craftspeople. So that example that you gave there, Rachel, about people that had picked things up as they went along, if they did want to formalise their training or they wanted to pursue something, then the tier 3 option might be right for them. But then because the tier 2 option is because of the funding, really, we're able to pay national minimum wage, and that means that the apprenticeships are really open to everybody. So if you had a career changer who was 30 but maybe was finding it difficult to get an apprenticeship, they might find it easier because of the intervention. So I think we are addressing that in 2 ways, really, hopefully.
Thank you. A question from Martin Stancliffe. Companies taking on apprentices will incur costs in passing on skills. Will these costs be met through the scheme?
So at the moment, the main level of investment is to make sure that we can do that. We can recruit as inclusively as possible, and that is definitely the focus of this. That is definitely the focus of the scheme. And there are small incentives available, but they are small. So we're hoping that the kind of the level of intervention, the excitement of being together in this big programme will be incentive enough. And also, I don't think there's any kind of positive research around this particularly, but I think that because the apprentices will be with those companies for quite a long period of time, yes, there will be a high level investment in making it work at the beginning, but hopefully those apprentices will pay for themselves by the end.
Sophie's very diplomatic. I'll be very forthright. The funder wants to see their money going on the young people, and that's where their money has to go from our point of view. I'll just be blunt about that. So I totally understand that comment and that point. And, you know, if it was my money, I would make sure there's another whole pot to cover some of those additional costs. But unfortunately, Sophie's diplomatic answer was nicer.
Yeah, well, I think that's we understand exactly what this scheme is trying to do, which is support young people get into employment in the heritage sector, and that's absolutely what we want. It's a question very relevant to that, actually, from Tom Austin. Are you planning on providing advertisement into schools for this programme to make students aged 15 to 16 aware of this as a career route?
I think at the moment that's the big missing chunk that we haven't given. We have found that, we have found that there is that challenge there, but it's not really something that we feel that the programme is trying to do a lot already. The programme will do a lot already, and I think that sort of careers advice piece is something that we might try and pick up later, and maybe with some partners that are more used to working with people in that age group, which we don't have that much experience of.
Fine, thank you. A question from James again. Would general builders who do plenty of work on heritage buildings be eligible to act as hosts? They would. Okay.
Yeah, so our key criteria really is that they've worked on pre-1919 buildings in the north of England in the last few years. So they could potentially work on a mixture of buildings. They might work on some historic buildings, but they might also work on some much newer buildings. And actually, I think that's that it's important to engage those sorts of companies, it's really important to engage them sorts of companies, because we know that something like 89% of firms that work on historic buildings consider themselves general construction companies. And I think the primary objective for this is to make sure that those young people have viable career routes. And if that means that they are, if that means they can work on modern buildings and historic buildings, then all the better for it.
Thank you. Another question from Rachel. What news do you have? This is slightly at a tangent. I think it's one for you, Phil. What news do you have of the new Stonemasonry apprenticeships?
Well, for Sophie, actually. So Sophie knows more than I do at the moment. Sophie. The standard's been approved. There was some issue around the funding band given to it, but the standard has been approved. So it's now up to people to offer it, and the training providers to take it on. But it's there.
Okay, thank you. And a question from Kazia Howard. Is there an upper age limit to participation? You mentioned career changes. These folks might be in their 30s or 40s or older even.
No, there is no upper age limit. Like I said, the only sort of any kind of limitation on recruitment to any of the 3 tiers is that first tier, where we're targeting people that are already engaged in a further education course, and that's the only requirement there.
Okay, well, I think we're coming towards about 5 minutes from the end now, so there's maybe time for one more question. And there was one about employability and the extent to which you may partly feel you've covered this already, but just I think it's a good one to end on is what do you think the prospects are for employability for young people from these programs going into the heritage sector?
Well, we think all the qualitative research, really, all the findings of previous programs that do things like this show that these people are employable, and they will be employable. We know that there are lots and lots of skill shortages in this area, and skills in construction is something that is constantly looked at by organisations like the Construction Leadership Council, and the need for them is only predicted to grow. So we think that there is really good evidence there that these people will be really employable when they've completed the programme. The problem is that there isn't enough capacity to deliver the training in the sector in the first place, and that's what we're trying to address. Okay.
Thank you very much. Well, we have really put you through it, Phil and Sophie, with all those questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good questions.
It's been a really informative session, actually. We will leave you with the email contact details for Sophie and Phil in the chat box. I think Katie will put it there, so that you can get in contact with them direct. Anybody, if you've got questions that occur to you later that you haven't been able to ask. A recording of this session will be available on the Consortium website in a couple of days when Katie's had a chance to put that up there. So it will be possible to point other people to it. By all means, please, if they're interested and want to hear more. And finally, I just want to remind you that our spring series of Tuesday talks continues on craft and conservation themes related to the work of Grinling Gibbons. And we'll be resuming with our next talk, Gibbons' Legacy at the Heart of St. Paul's Cathedral, on Tuesday, the 11th of May, which will be led by the Consortium's chair, Martin Stancliffe. And you can register for that via our website or using the link that's just appeared in the chat box as well, which will take you to that to register. So that's Tuesday, the 11th of May with Martin Stancliffe, Gibbons' Legacy at the Heart of St. Paul's Cathedral. So thank you to you all for watching and taking part tonight. It was great to have so many questions. I hope it's been useful and enjoyable. If you're not a Consortium member, then I encourage you to go to our website and have a look at joining. So finally, thank you again sincerely to this evening's two speakers, Phil Pollard and Sophie Norton. And thank you to you all for watching and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Good night.
Bye-bye.